Welcome to the deep dive. We're here to, unpack complex topics and mostly pull out some surprising insights for you.
That's the plan.
And today, we're diving into something that really challenges, I think, a pretty fundamental concept: identity, geopolitics.
Hmm.
Our source material today makes a really provocative claim. It
Mm.
basically says Russian isn't a nationality like we normally think of it. It's something else.
Right.
And we're going to explore this idea through the lens of what the document itself calls a secret annexation.
Sounds intriguing.
So our mission really is to dig into this one specific document. It focuses on Russia's actions, particularly in Georgia, but more crucially, the ideology the source claims is driving them.
Yeah.
This deep dive is about giving you, the listener, a shortcut, a way to grasp a complex situation by getting straight to the core ideas from this source,
Mhm.
ideas that might just shift how you see things.
And looking closely at this source, we're not just talking about, what's happening on the ground. It's about trying to understand why the source thinks it's happening.
Exactly.
We'll connect these seemingly separate actions back to what the document presents as a core belief system, something that it argues shapes how a whole nation behaves. It helps see the bigger picture, the context, based on this particular viewpoint.
Okay, so let's get right into it. This central idea, the source just kicks off with this statement that really makes you stop and think. Russian is not a nationality. I mean, that's not just a throwaway line. It's presented as key. So if being Russian isn't about ethnicity or shared history in the usual sense, then what is it? According to this document, anyway.
Well, that's where it gets really interesting. The source defines Russian as an artificially created ethnos.
Artificially created.
Yeah, it argues this identity isn't based on ancestry, but on a specific ideology it calls Velikaya Dzhavov. That translates to great power.
Okay, great power.
And the document claims this ideology has been, well, deliberately built up. Through unchanged policy and propaganda for many centuries, it elevates it essentially to a kind of religious belief.
Wow, religious belief. That's strong language.
Yeah, it is. And it goes on to say that this constant reinforcement has created a sort of changed historical reality, basically a lie that shapes generations.
A lie.
That's the word the source uses. And interestingly, it describes the current leader as the fruit of this womb, implying they're a direct product of this whole system.
An artificially created ethnos driven by a religious belief in great power.
Mm.
That's quite a framework. Does the source talk about how widespread this is supposed to be within Russia?
Oh, absolutely. And the numbers it gives are pretty staggering.
Okay.
The document claims that 90% of the Russian population consists of fanatics of the religion. 90%.
That's huge.
It is. And that leads to its really bold statement that, by its definition, the nationality Russian does not exist.
So how does it explain that, if 90% believe it?
It illustrates it by describing Russia as this collection of different peoples across, 83 different federal subjects, lots of different groups.
Yeah.
And the source argues that these diverse peoples, even though it says they're deprived of independence and freedom, the history of their country, the right to teach in their own language, mineral resources, and living in extreme poverty, they still consider themselves Russian. And the key point the source makes is that they're united only by this Velikaya Derzha ideology, not by, traditional ethnic ties or shared heritage.
Okay, so if this great power belief is supposedly so deep, so widespread internally, how does the source say it affects things externally on the world stage? Does it describe specific, mechanisms for expansion or interaction?
It does, yeah. It definitely argues this isn't just an internal thing, it projects outwards.
How so?
The source lays out 3 key behaviors it claims stem from this great power belief when Russians interact with other countries, other peoples.
Okay, what are they?
First, it says, a Russian will never be interested in the history of the country where he lives.
Never interested. Why?
Because, according to the source, these stories contradict the myths about the great power. So history is inconvenient.
Okay.
Second, the document claims a Russian will never apologize for the evil committed by his country.
I never apologize.
The reason given. According to the belief of the great power, this is a mission to save humanity, peacemakers. So bad actions are reframed as necessary, even righteous.
Right, the peacemaker justification. And the third?
Third, it argues a Russian will not learn the language of the country where he has settled compactly.
Won't learn the language.
Because, again, according to the belief of the great power, the world belongs to him. So why learn someone else's language if you feel the world is already yours?
Those are pretty stark claims about behavior. Does the source give any examples? to make it more concrete for us.
It does, yes. Which helps make these sort of abstract points feel more real.
Like what?
Well, for instance, it mentions Russians living in Brighton Beach, New York, do not know English, as an example of not learning the local language.
Okay, Brighton Beach.
And then, bringing it closer to the context of the document, Georgia, gives a historical example.
What's that?
During the Soviet era, and even earlier, the Russians who settled in Georgia never spoke Georgian, and on the contrary, demanded that we speak Russian.
Ah, demanding the locals speak Russian instead.
Exactly. The source uses this to argue it's a long-standing pattern, reinforcing the idea that this isn't new, but deeply embedded.
So this naturally leads to a really critical point in the document, how this ideology, this mindset, fuels what it calls the conquest of a foreign country. Paints a pretty concerning picture. It says, the Russian state machine trains and prepares legions of invaders.
Legions of invaders, strong word.
Very. And it's not just soldiers. The source is specific. Military personnel, civil servants, historians, scientists, educational workers, intelligentsia, representatives of art, media, and most importantly, the people.
Wow, basically everyone.
Yeah, the whole apparatus. It makes you think, what are the implications if a whole population, as the source claims, is raised in this bosom of great power ideology and then settles somewhere like Georgia? What's the pattern of conquest it describes?
Well, the source outlines a kind of multi-stage process for how it sees conquest happening.
Okay.
First, it suggests that once a country is targeted, its government is somehow handed over to a subordinate, someone who helps the enemy.
Right, internal help.
Then, the conqueror systematically brings in their own people to settle the area while at the same time pushing out the original inhabitants.
Settling and expelling.
And finally, maybe the most insidious part, according to the source, they appropriate their historical past and present himself as a resident of the conquered country.
Stealing history itself.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's presented as this comprehensive strategy, not just about land, but about erasing the identity, the history of the place.
So, keeping that pattern in mind, how does the source apply this to the current situation in Georgia? What specific things does it say are happening right now?
It gets very specific about current concerns in Georgia.
Such as?
It claims that Georgian laws actually encourage the population of the occupying country to settle on our territories.
The laws encourage it.
That's the claim. And it argues Georgia's own economic policy is unintentionally helping by expelling Georgians through emigration, basically creating space.
A vacuum.
Yeah. Then it states, citizens of the occupying country own the land and jobs of Georgia, and also that the poor population of our country sells land and land plots to the occupiers.
So an economic dimension, too.
A big one. It highlights real estate specifically. Also, the main buyers of apartments built by construction companies are citizens of the occupying country. And then it adds this little parenthetical question. It is interesting who runs these businesses.
Implying maybe it's not just random individuals buying property.
Exactly, hinting at something potentially more coordinated, a deeper economic infiltration.
And the source really tries to emphasize the urgency, doesn't it? With a pretty dramatic statement about what it takes for Georgia to become Russia.
It really does. It puts it in stark terms. It says, our small Georgia needs 1 million supposedly simple and Muzaffari.
Muzaffari. What's that mean?
It could be interpreted perhaps as simple newcomers, maybe migrants, or at least 2 oligarchs with the Russian mentality from Russia tomorrow to become Russia.
Wow. Just a million people or a couple of key figures.
Yeah, it frames it as this threshold, that the country is that vulnerable, that close to a point of no return, according to the author's perspective.
So looking ahead then, what does the source outline as the expected threats? Is there a concrete scenario it presents, tied maybe to Russia's wider aims?
Yes, it connects it directly to Russia's stated desire or perceived desire to gain complete hegemony on the Black Sea.
Okay, Black Sea dominance.
And it lays out this detailed, hypothetical plan, a scenario it claims would be put into action in case of defeat by Ukraine.
A contingency plan.
Seems to be presented that way. It uses the Autonomous Republic of Adjara in Georgia as a specific case study, notes the population is about 354,900.
Right, Adjara.
And it repeats the observation that most construction companies in Adjara find that the main buyers of apartments are citizens of the occupying country.
Setting the stage.
Exactly. Then the plan it alleges is, well, quite specific and chilling. It is enough to settle 200,000 Russians who, according to our laws, will become citizens of Georgia in a year or two.
200,000? That's a lot relative to the local population.
A significant number. Then the source claims, on the instructions of the Kremlin, they will demand the status of an independent republic.
Demand independence.
Followed by a referendum, which, the source predicts, Russia will support their choice.
Support the outcome they engineered.
And it adds the comment, as we have already seen many times, implying this is a known playbook.
A familiar pattern. But crucially, the source doesn't just leave it as a hypothetical fear. It says it has facts confirming this plan. What kind of evidence does it offer?
It points to things people can see for themselves, actually. Specifically, many videos on YouTube of Russian bloggers who teach Russians how to cross the border.
YouTube videos.
Yeah. And these videos apparently give practical advice how to register SHEPs, which seems to be some local term, maybe for a small business or sole proprietorship.
Okay.
How to buy land, an apartment, a private house, how to become citizens of Georgia. Basically, a how-to guide.
And the source connects this back to the laws.
Yes. It emphasizes that Georgian legislation currently allows all of this to happen.
Right.
And what the author finds particularly telling is that in these videos, this great state mentality is clearly visible.
How so?
It says the videos show neither sorry nor remorse. Instead, the people featured are quoted as saying things like, they are dragging us here.
Implying they're not just choosing to come, but are somehow compelled or entitled.
That seems to be the interpretation. A sense of mission, or just taking what's offered, aligning with that whole great power ideology discussed earlier.
So let's try and bring this all together. Our deep dive into this source, it's definitely revealed a very unique and, well, frankly, quite alarming perspective on nationality, ideology, and strategy.
It's certainly a distinct viewpoint.
And the author wraps it up with this really stark, symbolic image for Georgia's potential future, doesn't it?
It does. It says, if this is how things go, the mother of Kartli, the symbol of Georgia, should hold a cup in one hand and khachapuri in the other.
Implying a loss of defiance, maybe? Trading the traditional sword for, well, hospitality or commerce, perhaps signifying submission.
That seems to be the intended symbolism, yeah. A stark warning.
So, as we finish, this exploration really leaves us with some big questions, drawing from the source's own postscript. If, as this document suggests, no country should accept Russian citizens and real change requires overthrowing the regime from within, well then, what is the actual point of sanctions in this view? It's a challenging question the source implicitly raises.
It really makes you think about the intended versus actual effects of different geopolitical tools, doesn't it?
It does.
Yeah.
And maybe even more fundamentally, what does it truly signify when a nation's vulnerability, its situation, is summed up so bluntly as the source does with Georgia is for sale?
Yeah, that final line is incredibly provocative. It leaves you questioning the nature of sovereignty, economic influence, and national identity in today's world. Definitely something to mull over.